Chris Wright, as a teenager, he booked pop groups for students and in 1967 launched the music company Chrysalis. As chairman, he signed over 170 artists and groups, including Spandau Ballet, Billy Idol, Jethro Tull and Blondie, eventually selling his Chrysalis holding for over £100 million. Chris also set up Heart FM, LBC Radio and Chrysalis TV, producers of Midsummer Murders. He owned Wasps Rugby Club for 11 years, winning 11 trophies, although less successful as owner of Premier League Queen's Park Rangers. A successful owner-breeder, Chris was involved with over 200 wins, including 2 classics, and owned last year's champion 2-year-old filly Crescelian, Culture Vulture and Dark Angel. Chris, welcome to King for a Day. As an entertainment entrepreneur, if you were in sole charge of racing, what reforms and innovations would you introduce?
John, good to see you, and what a difficult question that is to start off with. I guess, really, we need to start with prize money, because at the end of the day, that is the most important issue that people are concerned with. We all know that prize money in England lags behind where it should be compared to most of the rest of the world. A couple of weeks ago, I had a runner at Windsor after the Gold Rush, won a 0 to 75 handicap. The gross prize money for first prize was, I think, £2,400, which would net down to something like £1,600 or £1,700. I have 3 or 4 partners in the horse as well. I mean, it really, really doesn't stack up. And you look at Windsor on a Monday night, it's packed to the rafters, everybody's having a great time. There's a lot of people there betting, a lot of people eating and drinking, paying admission tickets. And you do wonder, you know, why that's not reflected in the prize money.
But Chris, you're a free marketeer. There's enough horses at Windsor, the fields fill up, the number of owners and the syndicates have come along. There's no shortage of horses even with the prize money.
Well, you're absolutely right, John. I mean, I'm not saying that there's a shortage of runners, because there isn't a shortage of runners. But, and sometimes there are things that we can do about it. The same week, I had a filly win a maiden in Australia, and she picked up on a midweek race in Australia. She picked up something like over £20,000 for winning a maiden. The gross prize money minimum there midweek is 40,000 Australian dollars, which is over £25,000. The gross prize money anywhere in Australia on a Saturday is $60,000 or $70,000 for any race of any description. Think of all of the races in England on a Saturday that are still paying prize money of £3,000 or £4,000. In France, again, you can win a race there, a little race, and you can win £20,000. It can be done. I mean, in actual fact, the reverse of that is that the same week we had a winner at Haydock. Savoy Showgirl won a maiden there. There was a yearling bonus scheme, £10,000 bonus, a Bobis, which paid something like £3,500 to the owner, and an ROA scheme, a Racecourse Owners Association scheme, that put another £1,600 into the pot, and we did gross something like £20,000 on that race. But overall, the prize money in England clearly lags behind where it is in most of the rest of the world where racing takes place, and in countries like Turkey as well. I'm not just talking about the obvious ones, England, Australia and the United States.
Well, apart from grumbling and moaning about it, and yet there are enough horses in training, plenty of races going on, so there's no imminent crisis as far as people can see. What actually would you do? You're now in charge of racing, you're king for a day. How are you going to double, treble prize money? Well,
I mean, you are, of course, right. There is no crisis. I mean, there will be a crisis in racing if Royal Ascot takes place and one day is abandoned because there are no runners.
Well, there's 2 runners and a cellar at Warwick.
Yeah, exactly, and we all know that isn't going to happen. Well, I think there are, obviously, the biggest issue is the lack of an off-course tote monopoly. The countries where the prize money is strong do have an off-course tote monopoly. I think we all know the reasons why we don't have one here. I think there was an opportunity when betting shops started that we could have had an off-course tote monopoly, but that was a long time ago.
Chris, I cannot believe what I'm hearing from you, of all people, an entrepreneur, a man who has succeeded in the free market. you are calling for monopoly. It is unbelievable. I can understand sort of some socialists coming along and wanting it, people looking to France and America. I always say to anybody over in America, the land of the free, competition everywhere, built on free enterprise and marketing. What you have now is a horseman's monopoly, absolute disgraceful. And you, of all people who've benefited from capitalism, who've helped make capitalism what it is, calling for monopoly. Chris, have you lost your marbles?
Well, we're not going to get one, John, so it's not really...
Yeah, but you still want it. Like so many people in racing, you yearn for it.
If we had had one... then we'd be in a different position. And now with the internet coming in, it would change everything anyway. And the monopoly would not operate in the same way as the monopoly has happened in the past. The internet has changed everything for an awful lot of businesses, especially areas where there was anything like a quasi-monopoly. The internet destroys that. And the internet would be destroying that too. But...
Well, so do away with your dream world.
Okay, well,
forget that. What are you going to do now?
Okay, well, another thing where I think one has to be realistic as well is that the bookmakers now do not rely on racing to the same extent. You know, a lot of people are engaged in betting on other sports, especially on football. They managed to develop betting ideas on other sports where, you know, to make it more interesting. So, I mean, in theory, a football match can go one of two ways, except when you try and bet on it, it can go one of about a dozen different ways because they have to make it much more like a horse race. But a horse race is still a very good way to have a bet. It's exciting. You get a result quite quickly, and also people can engage themselves with the form and studying the form and trying to figure out what's going to win. So there's very much an element of expertise involved in it. It's not just pure luck. So it is a very good medium for betting. But one thing that I think that we could try and do is, again, looking at other countries, if you go to a TAB in Australia, it's actually a very nice, pleasant place. You could easily spend an afternoon there if you wanted to. If you go to a
cafe in France.
A cafe in France. Yeah. I mean, you can sit down. You can have a ham sandwich, a baguette. You can have a bottle of rosé. You can sit, you know, watching the racing and having a bet. Enjoy.
So would you have
company.
betting terminals in pubs?
There are pubs in Australia that actually have like an ATR in the betting. Yeah. And in the pub, I mean, and you can go and, you know, it's a part of the pub that is not involved, that there's another part of the pub that has that. I mean, why don't we you know, try and sort of lobby to get that in England, because our betting shops are not places that you want to spend more than a couple of minutes in. You go in, you have your bet.
No, you're being a bit unfair there.
Well, John, it's true. I mean, it is true. Can you imagine going into a betting shop in England, ordering a bottle of rosé and a ham sandwich or something, or a proper ham sandwich, and sitting down and, you know, they're not that kind of place.
The fear would be that if you did that, you'd get the drunken louts coming in, and it would be absolutely chaotic, isn't it?
I don't think you'd get drunken louts coming in. I think, you know, and anyway, in England you can get drunken louts anywhere. Yeah. I mean, you probably don't get the same degree of drunken louts in France as you get in England, but that's a cultural thing. The fear that the government would be concerned about is that it's going to encourage people to bet. But then if you're sitting at home watching the football on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, whatever, all the breaks are now dominated by betting companies telling you, you know, it's 10 to 1 that Steven Gerrard gets the next goal or something.
Bets and all that.
Yes, all of that kind of thing. And that's being pumped at you. Now, I mean, betting could well be an issue, that people are betting more than they should do. People might be eating more than they should do. They also might be drinking more than they should do. But unfortunately, we do live in a world where people have got the ability to do what they want to do. And if someone wants to bet, then they're going to have a bet. If they can bet over the internet. They don't need to be in the betting shop anymore. But let's try and make the betting shops a much more pleasant place for them, and let's try and spread the betting terminals into more areas like pubs and bars and things like that. I don't mean every pub and every bar, but that's one way where we could just raise the stakes and raise the income. That's worth exploring.
Lots of people would object to that. I would fully agree with you. make betting shops and you could drink. Why shouldn't you have a drink in a betting shop? Why shouldn't you be able to go into other places and have a bet, certain areas, etc.? Absolutely right, but I think it's a long way before we go and get that. And we have to look ahead at other sort of things, and you were thinking, being in this sort of promotional business and in the media, what's your position on racing on TV?
I have been involved in a lot of sports. I've been involved in football, obviously, with Queen's Park Rangers, but I've also been involved in rugby with Wasps, and before that I was involved in basketball with the Sheffield Sharks basketball team, all of which I owned. I've sat on the boards of the club owners for all of those sports. Certainly, every sport in England now is a minority sport, apart from football. I mean, football dominates. There used to be a time in the summer when you pick up the back page of a newspaper and the first 3 or 4 pages of the back page might be cricket. It doesn't matter now, World Cup, no World Cup, whatever time of year, you pick up a newspaper, the first 6 or 7 pages of the back page of a popular red top are going to be dominated by soccer, football. That's the world we live in. Every other sport has got to fight to put its product across into the overall marketplace. And the other sports I've involved in would give anything to be on the BBC, or certainly to be on one of the mainstream terrestrial television channels. There are so many people still around for whom the BBC is the first button they push. Sounds strange, and it may change, you know, in a generation or two to come, certainly, but right now it happens. And sports give anything to be on the BBC. I personally said at the time that the Channel 4 deal was done, I understand the reasons why and how Channel 4 had been good to racing and there was a substantial payment involved, but getting off the BBC is a really bad move for racing. I felt that at the time, and now I look at the figures and I see what's happening, and I feel even more convinced that what I said at the time is absolutely correct.
But didn't the BBC fall out of love with racing? They used to do about 90 days a year. It was down to about 13, 14 towards the end.
They were never going to do a lot of racing, and they did only want, you know, the crown jewels. So of course, I'm not sure what deal could or could not have been done. Did the BBC want to keep the Derby and Royal Ascot? Of course they'd have wanted to.
And the Grand National.
And the Grand National. And maybe Cheltenham as well, although they'd already lost Cheltenham by that time.
But then Channel 4 wouldn't have taken up everything else had they been cherry-picked like that.
But if they wouldn't have taken up everything else, would that have been a terrible thing?
So you would have thought that get the top 3 or 4 meetings on the BBC and have virtually no other racing on the terrestrial television.
I'm sure that Channel 4 would have taken a lot of racing. They might not have taken as much as they're taking, but I don't think that would have been a huge problem.
Channel 4 would not have been involved in racing if they didn't have Cheltenham and Ascot and that kind of thing now. They wouldn't be involved in it. And I don't blame them.
But OK, if that's the position, I'm still not so sure that it would have been such a bad thing. Because, you know, racing needs to put its front window of its prime assets in front of as many people as it can possibly do. And I don't think that there is a realisation that we are a minority sport competing for the public's attention, and we need to do whatever we can do to put ourselves across to the most number of people. And unfortunately, the most number of people is BBC, or at least BBC and ITV. And I don't even think that BBC necessarily do a great job of production. They're very capable of doing a great job. In the case of rugby, the Sky production on rugby is way much better than the BBC.
Sky Cricket's fantastic.
I mean, Sky do a fantastic job of production. The BBC can do a great job of things, but they don't always. And with racing, the important thing is that not only do you have that time slot when you're in front of people, but broadcasters these days tend to promote the sports that they own, and they tend to forget or turn a blind eye to the ones that they don't own. So if the BBC have got the Derby and Royal Ascot and events like that, in the lead up to those events, you're going to get a lot of coverage on the news, on the 6 o'clock news, the 10 o'clock news, the breakfast news, all the way through the day. Don't forget to watch. We'll be running the programme tomorrow from, all of this kind of thing. And it all engages people to a much greater extent than you can get by having racing on Channel 4.
How do you think the racing public would react if these meetings were on the BBC, but nothing else was on terrestrial television? Now, it'd be terrific for our company here, ATR, RUK, they would benefit from it. Viewing figures would really go up for them. But for the ordinary viewer that we want to get involved with racing, not on the terrestrial television, just the select events on the BBC, overall, is that good for racing?
I think there could be a bit of spillage, definitely. I wonder what the figures are for right now on a Saturday afternoon for ATR, RUK and Channel 4. Do you know those figures, the respective figures?
Well, I certainly wouldn't venture them, as I'm not certain.
No. And what different... I mean, I personally very often will watch RUK rather than Channel 4.
Or ATR?
Or ATR. It depends on what meetings are on. I mean, if it's
yeah, but you're a racing nut.
Yes.
So you will watch it, and we've hooked you. We haven't got to bother with people like you and me and racing people. It's to get the general public involved. And are they going to do it if it's only on terrestrial television for the peak events?
But then it's a trade-off, John, as to get the general public involved with the crown jewels as well. And how many of those people that get involved with the crown jewels that they're only going to watch if it's on BBC One? And to hook them and to get them interested in racing going forward. I mean, it's, of course, you know, I can see the counter argument, but I do honestly think in all of my life in sports, minority sports need coverage on the major networks. That is a fact.
Well, I remember the old days, and you'll remember this. Speedway, show jumping was on the BBC. Now people just don't know anything about it.
Of course they don't. Yeah. And you know, those old days when there wasn't that much sport around and the BBC covered it, it became huge. People could tell you the names of all the swimmers and the speedway riders and the wrestlers on a Saturday afternoon and things like that. Yeah. I mean, and they became national names.
But then it was a different era we were in.
It was a different era, but the BBC...
The two channels.
I know, but the BBC is still extremely dominant. And like I say, it's not just for the time you're on air with the event, it's for the time you're not on air that they are promoting it, because that is their event.
But the Channel 4 viewing figure for the Derby this year was 1.5 million. That's a calamity for racing. Because I remember the sponsors, when the old days were, 4 or 5 years ago, were thinking of getting it up to 5 or 6 million. They said that at press conferences.
It is a calamity for racing, and it is not going to get any better, because the more people disengage, the figure next year will not go up. It will go down. And I don't think people are now looking at whether it's in the production values, and I have my views on the production values of what's happening. I don't think the production values for the Derby there was nothing really wrong with the production of the Derby programme. I mean, we may have our own views of the production that goes into Channel 4 racing in general. I certainly think that the morning line has become basically unwatchable. It used to be an appointment to view where you would absolutely make sure that you were there watching it at 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't think it's now anything that you need to watch at all, really, which is a shame, because that's something that we are missing a trick on, definitely. But, you know, it's not just down to production values. It is down to actually being on a network which is going to get you in front of an awful lot of eyes.
Now, what about the position of racing in the sporting calendar of the nation?
I think it's under threat to some extent. I think there have always been too many people in racing that don't grasp the fact that we're actually in the entertainment business, and that unless you do that, you can't compete with your competition.
Well, we've got great British racing who are promoting it all the time.
Yes.
Much more is being spent now and devoted to the marketing of racing than ever before.
Yes, but I still think there's attitudes in racing that need to change. There are still too many conservative with a little c attitudes that think that basically everything's all right and that we shouldn't be innovating, we shouldn't be trying to change anything at all. Should we be having jockeys' weights in kilos as we move more and more to a metric world in weights, for example? Should we be relaxing the dress codes? I, for one, I'm quite happy to dress up when I go racing, but I'm 69 years old. a lot of young people now don't have anything but jeans.
What does it matter if they wear jeans?
Well,
But the race courses say that the members want it,
the members, John, are all they're all in their 70s, and they can ask the same question in 5 years' time, and the members will be in their 80s, and they'll still get the same answer, except they only get half the people answering because the rest aren't around. And what we have to engage with the 20-year-olds and the 30-year-olds and get them to come. And if you actually go to a place that's well run, like, you know, and I'll say Ascot or Chester or York, where you've got good facilities and they get young people there, and they do.
Well, they have dress codes.
Well, they do have dress codes, but there are some relaxations in dress codes. Like Windsor on a Monday evening has a much more relaxed dress code. That I know York and Goodwood, there's still dress codes there, but there's areas where you don't have to quite, you know, perform to the same degree of dress code, but I think we need to just relax it a bit overall. We have to tell people, hey, come racing.
It's fun. Join the family.
Exactly. You can have a great day out. You have a few drinks with your mates. You have something to eat. You have a few bets. You know, the spectacle's great. It's really exciting. If you win some money, it's magnificent. But you don't want to be told, like Newbury did, when they were like having the police check up on what people were wearing. I mean, when I say a lot of young people do not wear suits, they don't have a suit. They only wear jeans. There are a lot of women that have got 30 pairs of jeans in their closet, all of which cost several £100 each. It's not, jeans aren't just a working man's sort of, you know, what you use to clean the streets with these days. It's a fashion item.
But what people wear should be up to them. It doesn't matter, as long as people don't go around nude or something like that, but that's breaking the laws anyway. So why do people get so het up and courses so worried that people will come in not wearing a tie, for instance? It doesn't matter in life.
If you go racing in Australia or France or in the States, you don't have to wear a tie. I was at the French Derby Day. I mean, years ago, I think the French Derby Day, you wore.
Channel 4 covered, and we were in top hat and tails.
Yeah. I wore a jacket and tie. I'm quite happy to wear a jacket and tie, but I was certainly in a minority of men there, where the fact that I was wearing a jacket and tie. So, you know, but it's not. I'm not just saying that we need to change rules. I'm just saying we need to change attitudes. There is an attitudinal issue here as to exactly what racing is as part of the fabric of the British overall entertainment spectrum.
But as king for the day, because you force racecourses to admit people whatever they're wearing, virtually.
I wouldn't say whatever they're wearing, but I would say as long as they're dressed reasonably well, you should let them in and tell them they're very welcome to be there.
Looking at the sort of climax of the racing season, they're bringing on Champions Day at Ascot in the middle of October. Are you for that innovation, and what more would you do to improve it?
I'm totally in favour of Champions Day. And I know it's been very difficult to do it. There's hurdles you've got to cross with the racing calendar, and obviously the racing in Ireland, the pattern, the ARC weekend, which is a very significant weekend for racing as well. But I do think that we should be dealing with the obstacles in Great Britain a lot more a lot more readily than we're doing. I think Champions Day is a great idea. Of course, you'd probably like to have the date brought back a little bit, but because of the ARC you can't. So it is probably where it is. Let's accept that. It's at Ascot. That's where it should be. But I do think there is too much of a preoccupation on what should be at Newmarket and what should not be at Newmarket. When Chris Elliott won the Fillies Mile at Newmarket, there were maybe 500 people there. You know, that was part of that.
So would you move the Dewhurst, the Middle Park, all those races to your Champions Day at Ascot?
I would certainly make Champions Day have Champions 2-year-old races as part of it. I think that's essential. Having thought about it, I'm not sure if I would make it a 2-day meet like the Breeders' Cup's become with the Friday and Saturday. So Newmarket could still have something, you know, on the weekend before or on the Friday before, but I would certainly have a champion 2-year-old race, at least one, as part of the offering at Champions Day at Ascot. What I'd suggest is, why don't we do something a little bit like the Golden Slipper in Australia, which is the world's richest 2-year-old race. we put that on at Ascot, 6.5 furlongs, £1 million prize money, colts and fillies, champion 2-year-old. You could still run the Dewhurst. You might get rid of the Middle Park. You could probably get rid of the Middle Park, make the Mill Reef Group 1, not Group 2.
But this is tinkering, isn't it?
No, it's not tinkering. It's not tinkering, John. I'm saying you're going to have a Champions Day, you're going to have a champion stayer, a champion miler, a champion middle distance, a champion sprinter, etc., a champion filly, and you're going to have a champion 2-year-old. And if you put up the prize money, make it 6.5 furlongs down the straight course at Ascot, everybody with a top 2-year-old is going to want to run in it. It would be great. Let's do that.
Briefly, Sunday racing?
Sunday racing, yes. Good Friday racing, yes. We've got to, again, as a minority sport, we've got to see where we've got slots in the calendar when nothing else is taking place. Bank holiday Mondays, let's put proper racing on. The Easter Monday, let's put racing on there. There really isn't anything there. It used to be Kempton in the old days. Let's have a big meeting then with a big handicap, £150,000 handicap or something. Good Friday I've talked about. May Day Monday. It's a blank day in the calendar. No football, no nothing. Let's have a really big race day somewhere with a big pot of prize money. Get people engaged on days that they can go and see top-class racing on a good day out, instead of focusing it on just on Saturdays in the football season when you're up against football, or midweek when people can't go. Although I must say the pride of British racing is our midweek festivals. Ascot, Goodwood, York, Newmarket. They are fantastic. They are absolutely to be cherished. They are what sets us apart from the rest of the world. Do not interfere with those. They are great.
Ownership, finally. You've owned lots of horses in your time. What quickly can be done for owners?
What can be done for owners?
Apart from prize money, obviously.
Well, obviously prize money, but I think there is a greater move to improve facilities for owners. And I think that is beginning to happen. Some racecourses are now giving free food for owners. I thought it was very good at Epsom, the owners' marquee at Epsom, where you can actually get a decent plate of salad and so forth in nice facilities. That's what everyone should be doing, not just there, but everybody should be trying to aspire to what some of those courses are doing. It's moving in the right direction. It needs to move faster, and it needs to be moving more across the board. But I think there is a move there which is heading the right way.